The mist clung to the ancient spires of St. Agnes Church like a shroud, as the evening bells tolled their mournful dirge across the sleepy village of Ashford-on-Thames. It was a chill autumn night in 1935, and the choir loft, high above the nave, echoed with the final strains of evensong. Reginald Harrington, the esteemed choirmaster, struck the organ's keys with fervent passion, until a single piercing scream shattered the harmony. Parishioners below gasped as Harrington slumped forward, a crimson stain blooming across his white surplice. Poison? A dagger? The shadows in the loft concealed the truth. But one thing was certain. Murder had profaned this sacred ground. Who among the faithful harbored such venomous intent? Chapter 1. The Echo of Evensong. The heavy oak doors of St. Agnes Church creaked open, admitting Hercule Poirot into the dimly lit nave, where the air was thick with the scent of wax and old hymnals. The little Belgian detective, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the dust of travel, adjusted his immaculate mustache with a gloved hand. He had not intended to linger in Ashford-on-Thames. A mechanical fault had stalled his train to London, and a chance conversation at the station with a local constable had drawn him to this unexpected tableau of death. Poirot, ever attuned to the whims of fate, sensed that his gray cells were about to be summoned for a most intriguing puzzle. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, his face etched with the fatigue of a long day, greeted him with a mixture of relief and exasperation. "Poirot, old chap, what brings you to this god-forsaken corner of England? Didn't expect to see you here, but I'm glad of it. We've a nasty business on our hands. Reginald Harrington, choirmaster, poisoned right in the choir loft during evensong. Cyanide in his tea, we suspect. Dead before he hit the organ keys." Poirot's green eyes twinkled with curiosity as he surveyed the scene. Locked horns over church funds. Harrington accused him of dipping into the tithes. Then there's Arthur Blackwood, tenor, bit of a hothead. Harrington humiliated him at a recital last year, called his singing a caterwaul unfit for the angels. Finally, Lydia Harrington, the victim's wife. Cold as ice, that one. Stands to inherit a tidy sum, though the estate's not as grand as some think. Poirot nodded, his mind already cataloguing details. "And the victim, this Monsieur Harrington, what manner of man was he?" Japp sighed. "Reginald Harrington, 52, ruled the choir like a general. Brilliant musician, composed a few pieces that made waves in London years ago. But he had a tongue sharp enough to cut glass. Made enemies as easily as he made music. Recently he was poking into the church accounts, claimed there were discrepancies. Might have stirred up trouble." Poirot ascended the spiral staircase to the choir loft, his steps deliberate, each click of his shoes a metronome to his thoughts. The loft was a cramped, shadowy space, dominated by the organ's looming bulk. Harrington's body had been removed, but the scene remained vivid. A teacup shattered on the floor, its contents staining the worn wood. The organ bench askew, and curiously a hymn book splayed open on the music stand, its pages marked with a cryptic note inked in the margin. The serpent in Eden must fall. Poirot's lips pursed. A biblical allusion? A taunt? Or a clumsy attempt at misdirection? He knelt to examine the teacup fragments, noting the faint, almond-like scent of cyanide. "The poison, it is swift," he murmured. "But why the tea? And why here, where all eyes might see?" The killer risks much for spectacle. His fingers brushed the hymn book, and he noticed a faint smudge, ink perhaps, or something more sinister. He tucked the observation away, his gray cells humming. Below, the suspects had gathered in the vestry at Japp's request. Poirot descended to meet them, his small frame exuding an authority that belied his said, her voice steady but distant. "We lived separate lives in many ways. His death is a shock, but inheritance? Such a vulgar assumption." Poirot observed them closely, noting the subtle glances exchanged. Emily's fleeting look at Arthur, quickly averted. Father O'Shea's nervous adjustment of his collar. Lydia's unblinking stare. There were undercurrents here, secrets woven into the fabric of their words. He probed gently, learning that Harrington's will left everything to Lydia, but with a codicil. If foul play was proven, a portion would fund church restoration. A motive, perhaps, for someone outside the family? The detective requested access to Harrington's study, a small room off the vestry cluttered with sheet music and dusty ledgers. There, he found a locked diary, its leather cover worn but intact. With Japp's permission, he picked the lock, a skill acquired in less decorous days, and skimmed its pages. Entries were terse, but one caught his eye. E.T. hides her shame. A.B. seeks vengeance. The truth will ruin them. Initials for Emily Thorne and Arthur Blackwood? Or another deception? Poirot pocketed the diary, his mind racing. As the suspects dispersed, Father O'Shea lingered, his face pale. "Mr. Poirot, there's something you should know. This church has a legend, a ghostly chorister, said to haunt the loft. Poppycock, of course, but last night I heard singing after hours, not Harrington's voice, something unearthly." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Mon père, the supernatural is often the human in disguise. But I shall investigate this phantom." He stepped outside, where the mist had thickened, cloaking the churchyard in an eerie haze. A faint rustle drew his attention, a figure darting among the gravestones. He moved to pursue, but the shadow vanished into the fog. A warning? A clue? Or merely his imagination, stirred by the night's mysteries? Returning to the loft, Poirot examined the organ more closely. Beneath the bench he found a single pearl. Someone watched from above. He could feel it. The game had only begun, and the next move would be perilous. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Vestry. The vestry of St. Agnes Church was a cramped, shadowed chamber, its stone walls lined with ancient hymnals and a single flickering candelabrum casting long, wavering shadows across the faces of the assembled suspects. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his small, fastidious frame an incongruous contrast to the looming Gothic arches beyond the door. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, swept over the group. Emily Thorne, Father Michael O'Shea, Arthur Blackwood, and Lydia Harrington, each seated on a hard wooden bench, their expressions a tapestry of fear, defiance, and guarded secrecy. The air was heavy with the scent of old incense and the lingering echo of evensong, now profaned by murder. Poirot, ever the conductor of human motives, began his delicate interrogation, his voice soft but commanding, like a maestro summoning the first notes of a symphony. "Mes amis," he began, his Belgian accent lending a musical cadence to his words, "a crime most foul has occurred in this sacred place. Monsieur Reginald Harrington lies dead, poisoned in the choir loft during the very act of worship. The method, it is precise. Cyanide. Perhaps in his tea, perhaps elsewhere. But the why and the who, these are the questions that occupy the gray cells of Hercule Poirot. You will speak, and I will listen. And in your words the truth will begin to reveal itself. Emily Thorne, her fiery red hair barely contained by a silk scarf, was the first to break the uneasy silence. Her hands twisted a pair of kid gloves with such ferocity that Poirot half expected them to tear. "Mr. Harrington was a tyrant," she declared, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "He ruled the choir with an iron fist, always favoring that simpering alto, Clara, over those of us with true talent. He told me my voice lacked divine spark in front of the entire congregation. It was humiliating embezzlement, if you can believe it. Preposterous. Every penny went to the orphanage in Wickham, as the bishop himself will attest. I've no cause to harm the man, though he tried my patience sore." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching slightly. "Mon père, an accusation of theft, even if false, is a grave matter. Did Monsieur Harrington have proof of these discrepancies, or was it merely suspicion?" O'Shea's eyes flickered with unease. "He claimed to have found irregularities in the ledgers, said he'd take it to the diocese. But I swear it was all above board. The funds were accounted for, mostly." The word mostly hung in the air like a discordant note. Poirot's gaze lingered on the priest, whose fingers now clutched a rosary as if it were a lifeline. A half-truth, perhaps? The detective's mind catalogued the detail for later scrutiny. Arthur Blackwood, lean and brooding, leaned back in his seat, his dark eyes smoldering with barely concealed contempt. His tenor voice, usually resonant, was clipped and bitter. "Harrington was a fraud and a bully," he spat. "Last year at the autumn recital he called my singing a caterwaul unfit for the angels. The whole village laughed. And worse, he stole my best aria, claimed it as his own composition. I confronted him, but he laughed in my face, said I'd never prove it. But poison? That's not my way. I'm a gentleman, not some skulking assassin." Poirot's eyebrows arched. "A gentleman, Monsieur Blackwood. Yet a man humiliated so publicly might harbor a grudge deep enough to act. Tell me, did you ever seek to reclaim your work, or your honor?" Arthur's jaw tightened, and his hands clenched into fists. "I thought about it, even threatened to take it to the courts. But murder? I'd rather see him ruined than dead." Lydia Harrington, veiled in black like a mourning statue, sat with an almost unnatural composure. Her pale hands were folded in her lap, and her voice, when she spoke, was steady but distant, as if reciting a rehearsed elegy. "My husband was a man consumed," read the room like a score, noting the subtle interplay of glances. Emily's fleeting look at Arthur quickly averted. Arthur's scowl at the mention of Harrington's name. Father O'Shea's nervous fidgeting. Lydia's impenetrable calm. There were secrets here, woven into the fabric of their words, and Poirot's gray cells were already unraveling the threads. He produced the diary found in Harrington's study, its leather cover worn but intact. Holding it aloft, he read aloud a single entry. E.T. hides her shame. A.B. seeks vengeance. The truth will ruin them. The room stilled, as if the air itself held its breath. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "What shame?" she demanded, her voice rising. "I've nothing to hide. That's slander written by a cruel man." Arthur's face darkened, but he said nothing. His silence louder than words. Father O'Shea crossed himself again, muttering a prayer, while Lydia's expression remained unreadable. Poirot closed the diary with a snap. The initials. They suggest Mademoiselle Thorne and Monsieur Blackwood. But perhaps it is a ruse, no? A clever killer might plant such a clue to mislead. Or perhaps it is the truth waiting to be uncovered. He turned to Jap, who stood by the door, his pipe sending curls of smoke into the air. "Inspector, have you examined the church accounts? Monsieur Harrington's accusations of theft, they must have a basis, yes?" Jap nodded. "We've got the ledgers, but they're a mess. Looks like someone's been juggling numbers, donations not matching receipts. Harrington was onto it all right. Threatened to expose the culprit." Father O'Shea's face reddened further. "I told you it was for the orphanage, but, well, Reginald did ask me to cover some personal debts of his, small sums, mind you. I used the collection plate once or twice, with his blessing. He said it was temporary, to keep his creditors at bay." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Masked. He made a mental note to probe further into the Harringtons' marriage. As the interrogation wound down, the suspects were dismissed, each retreating with a mix of relief and wariness. Emily lingered, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting pursuit. Arthur stormed out, his footsteps echoing in the nave. Father O'Shea muttered a blessing and shuffled toward the rectory. Lydia rose gracefully, her black gown sweeping the floor like a specter, and glided away without a backward glance. Poirot remained in the vestry, his fingers tracing the edge of the diary. The silence was broken by a faint sound, a whisper, or perhaps a sigh, drifting from the direction of the choir loft. He froze, his senses alert. "Qu'est-ce que c'est?" he murmured, stepping into the nave. The church was empty, the congregation long departed, yet the air seemed charged with presence. He ascended the spiral staircase once more, his heart quickening despite his rational mind. In the loft, the organ loomed like a silent judge, its pipes catching the moonlight filtering through a high window. Poirot's eyes scanned the shadows, and there, tucked behind a stack of sheet music, he found it. A phonograph, its needle poised over a record labeled Harrington's Requiem. A test play revealed a haunting melody, the victim's own composition, but rigged to start automatically. A ghostly effect, no doubt intended to unnerve. Who had said it? A prankster, or the killer covering their tracks? As he examined the device, a floorboard creaked behind him. He whirled, but the loft was empty. Yet in the darkness below, a shadow moved swiftly toward the churchyard. Poirot hesitated, his instinct urging pursuit, but caution prevailed. The night was thick with fog, and a killer roamed free. He descended, clutching the phonograph record, his mind alight with possibilities. Back in the vestry, Jap awaited, his pipe now cold. "Find anything, Poirot?" "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, holding up characteristic intensity, his green eyes gleaming beneath the brim of his Homburg hat. The murder of Reginald Harrington in the choir loft of St. Agnes Church had stirred the village like a stone cast into a still pond, and Poirot sought to trace the ripples back to their source. Mr. Harrington weren't always the saintly choirmaster, Grimsby confided, wiping a tankard with a cloth that had seen better days. Back in London, nigh on 20 years ago, he was a composer of some note. Pun intended, sir. Had a grand opera house debut, they say, but it all went sour. Whispers of a scandal, an affair with a singer, some say a dancer. Left a right mess, and a child if the rumors be true. He came to Ashford to escape the talk, but you can't outrun your past, can you? Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his quickening interest. A child, you say, Monsieur Grimsby. And this affair, it was known to Madame Harrington? The innkeeper shrugged, his eyes darting toward the door as if expecting eavesdroppers. Lydia Harrington's a proper lady, keeps her own counsel. But folk reckon she knew. Married him anyway, mind, but there's a coldness twixt them, or so the maids at the manor say. Poirot sipped his tisane, his mind cataloguing this revelation. A love child, a scandal buried in the past. Could it be the key to the poison that had silenced Harrington's organ? The diary entry from the victim's study, E.T. hides her shame, loomed in his thoughts. Was Emily Thorne, the fiery soprano, connected to this shadowy history? Or was it another thread in the tapestry of deception? Leaving the inn, Poirot returned to St. Agnes under a sky heavy with clouds, the mist coiling thicker around the church's ancient spires. The nave was silent now, the congregation dispersed. But the choir loft beckoned like a stage awaiting its next act. Inspector Japp awaited him in the vestry, his pipe sending curls of smoke into the air. "Any luck at the pub, Poirot?" "Killer ensures death even if the tea is untouched." "Order and method, Inspector. This murderer plans with care." He ascended to the choir loft once more, his patent leather shoes clicking on the spiral staircase. The organ loomed, its pipes catching the faint glow of a lantern Japp had brought. Poirot ran a gloved finger along the keys, noting the faint sheen of the residue. "This is no accident," he murmured. "The killer knew Monsieur Harrington's habits. His hands never left the organ during evensong. A poison applied here would be fatal, yet subtle. But who had access to these keys?" Japp scratched his chin. "The choir, the organ tuner, the vicar, half a dozen folks at least. And the poison stores in the church basement, rat killer mostly, are locked, but the keys kept in the vestry. Not exactly Fort Knox." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The accessibility of the poison widened the net, but the residue narrowed it. He turned his attention to the hymn book, still open on the music stand, its cryptic note, "The serpent in Eden must fall," staring back like a taunt. He examined the ink, the paper, the smudge he had noticed earlier. "This note," he said, "it is fresh, written in haste. But is it the killer's hand, or a distraction? We must interrogate further." Back in the vestry, Poirot summoned Emily Thorne for a private audience. The soprano entered, her red hair now loose, framing a face pale with strain. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, his tone gentle but probing, "the diary of Monsieur Harrington speaks of shame. Your shame, perhaps? Tell me, what did he know that caused you such distress?" Emily's eyes widened, then narrowed with defiance. "That wretched diary! He threatened to expose my birth. Illegitimate, you see. My mother was a seamstress, my father unknown. Harrington found out, said it'd ruin my chances for the Royal Choral Society audition. He held it over me like a sword. But I didn't kill him. I wanted to prove him wrong, not dead." Prepared. Arthur hesitated. "In the nave, practicing. Ask anyone. But Poirot knew alibis could be manufactured. He turned to Father O'Shea, who entered with a nervous shuffle. Mon père, you mentioned a missing collection plate, yet you covered Monsieur Harrington's debts. Why? O'Shea's ruddy cheeks paled. The plate, it was misplaced, not stolen. As for the debts, Reginald insisted, said it was for the church's good, to keep his creditors quiet. I used the funds, yes, but only at his urging. Poirot's mustache twitched. Blackmail, perhaps. He held something over you? O'Shea's eyes darted away. He knew of my fondness for the poor box. A small indiscretion long ago. I made amends. The detective dismissed the priest, his mind whirring. Each suspect had a motive, a secret, a thread to pull. But a red herring emerged as Japp presented a new find. A poisoned apple in the choir's fruit basket, left untouched in the vestry. Someone's playing games, Japp muttered, trying to muddy the waters. Poirot agreed. A distraction, meant to confuse. The apple is too obvious, too theatrical. The true poison lies elsewhere. As night deepened, Poirot lingered in the church, drawn back to the loft by a compulsion he could not name. The silence was oppressive, broken only by a faint, ethereal hum, a melody, soft and haunting, drifting from the organ. His pulse quickened. He approached, expecting another phonograph trick, but found nothing. The sound ceased, leaving only the creak of the floorboards. Superstition, he scolded himself, but the air felt charged, as if the church itself held its breath. Descending to the vestry, he found a new clue. A woman's brooch engraved with E.T. tucked beneath a pew. Emily Thorne's, or another plant. He pocketed it, his gray cells racing. The diary, the note, the residue, the brooch, pieces of a puzzle. But the picture remained elusive. Stepping into the churchyard, Poirot's lantern cast a... Japp shook his head. You're seeing ghosts, Poirot. But I'll admit that letter's a bombshell. We'll check for prints, though I doubt we'll find any. Poirot smiled enigmatically. Ghosts, perhaps, but human ones. The killer is clever, but not infallible. The gray cells, they will prevail. As he retired to his room, the church bells tolled too, their mournful peal a reminder of the stakes. The shadows of Harrington's past were closing in, and Poirot knew the next clue would bring him face to face with danger. Chapter 4. The Phantom Melody. The discovery of the phonograph in the choir loft sent a ripple of unease through the suspects gathered in the vestry of St. Agnes Church, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of a single candelabrum. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating an almost theatrical authority, held the record aloft, its label, Harrington's Requiem, gleaming faintly in the dim light. The haunting melody it had played, mistaken for a ghostly chorister, was no supernatural phenomenon but a calculated act, designed to unsettle or mislead. The question gnawed at Poirot's gray cells. Who had rigged the device, and to what end? Was it a killer's alibi, a distraction, or a taunt? The air in the vestry was thick with suspicion, the stone walls seeming to close in as the detective prepared to peel back another layer of the mystery surrounding Reginald Harrington's murder. Mes amis, Poirot began, his Belgian accent sharp yet melodic. This phonograph is a clue most curious. It suggests a mind not only cunning but theatrical, a mind that plays with perception as deftly as it wields poison. We are dealing with a murderer who orchestrates, much like our late choirmaster. Let us now unravel the threads further. Emily Thorne,
her red hair catching the candlelight like a flame, was the first to react. She rose from her bench, her hands trembling as she clutched her scarf. "That brooch you found, Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice edged with panic. "The one marked E.T. It's not mine. It was stolen from my room at the inn day."
Room. Let us convene in the nave, mes amis. The choir loft is the stage of this crime, but the motives, they are here among you. We shall explore them together. The group moved to the nave where the stained glass windows cast fractured colors across the pews, painting the scene with an eerie, almost sacred glow. The organ loomed above, its pipes silent but ominous, a reminder of the murder that had profaned this holy place. Poirot positioned himself at the foot of the spiral staircase, his patent leather shoes gleaming as he paced, each step a deliberate beat in the rhythm of his investigation. "Order and method," he declared, his voice carrying through the cavernous space. "The murder of Monsieur Harrington is not a crime of passion alone. It is calculated, with layers like the onion, each peeling to reveal a new truth or a new deception. Let us consider the evidence." He produced the diary once more, its leather cover worn but weighty with secrets. Flipping to a marked page, he read aloud, "E.T. and A.B. conspire in shadows. Their secret will undo them." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her throat, while Arthur's face darkened, his fists clenching at his sides. "What conspiracy, Monsieur Poirot?" Emily demanded, her voice shrill. "I've nothing to hide." Arthur stepped forward, his tenor voice low and dangerous. "If you're implying some sordid plot, you're barking up the wrong tree. Harrington was a thief and a bully, but I didn't need Emily to fight my battles." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Yet, Monsieur Blackwood, your eyes betray you. And you, Mademoiselle Thorne, your glance at him is not that of mere acquaintance. Confess, s'il vous plaît. Is there a connection between you?" The silence that followed was electric. Emily's cheeks flushed and Arthur's jaw tightened. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We've been close for months. An affair, if you must know. Harrington found out, threatened to expose us. Said it'd ruin my audition, his reputation. But we pledged his creditors. He promised to repay it, but..." His voice trailed off and he crossed himself. "God forgive me. I should have refused." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And what did he hold over you, mon père? For no man risks his calling without coercion." O'Shea's eyes widened, then dropped to the floor. "He knew of my past, a youthful indiscretion, a theft from a parish long ago. I've made amends, but he threatened to tell the bishop. I had no choice." Blackmail, again. Poirot's mind catalogued the pattern. Harrington, it seemed, had wielded secrets like a conductor's baton, controlling those around him. But who had turned the tables? He turned to Lydia Harrington, her veiled figure a study in stillness. "Madame, your husband was a man of many secrets, it seems. An affair in London, debts, blackmail. Yet you claim your marriage was merely distant. Were there no other entanglements?" Lydia's hands, folded in her lap, tightened slightly. "Reginald's heart belonged to his music," she said, her voice steady but cold. "If he strayed in London, I forgave him long ago. We lived as partners, not lovers. His threats to others, I knew nothing of them." Poirot noted the faint tremor in her voice, the slight shift of her veil. A lie, or merely the strain of grief? He pressed further. And the inheritance, madame? A modest sum, you say, but enough to secure your future. Did you know of the codicil in his will, diverting funds to the church if foul play was proven? Lydia's head tilted, her eyes invisible behind the veil. I knew of it. Reginald was devoted to St. Agnes, but I had no need to hasten his death for money. I am not so mercenary. The detective stepped back, his mind whirring. The affair between Emily and Arthur, O'Shea's blackmail, Lydia's composure, each piece fit, yet the puzzle was incomplete. He needed more evidence, more threads to weave into a coherent whole, but found only a single rose petal, crushed and out of place. A mourner's tribute, or a killer's oversight. As he rose, a stone toppled nearby, crashing against a headstone with a sound like a gunshot. Poirot whirled, his lantern casting wild shadows, but the figure responsible had vanished into the mist. His heart raced, not with fear but with the thrill of the chase. Mon Dieu, he murmured. The killer grows bold, but boldness betrays. Returning to the vestry, he shared the incident with Jap, who cursed under his breath. Someone's got it in for you, Poirot. Watch your back. Poirot smiled enigmatically. The back, it is watched, mon ami. But the eyes, they see forward. The phantom melody, the stolen brooch, the blackmail letter. These are not random. They are notes in a score, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall conduct the finale. He lingered in the church, the silence broken only by the distant drip of wax from the candelabrum. The organ loomed above, its keys a silent witness to murder. Poirot's gray cells worked tirelessly, piecing together the motives. Emily's ambition, Arthur's rage, O'Shea's shame, Lydia's inheritance. Yet the rose petal nagged at him, a detail too delicate for this grim tableau. Was it a clue to the killer's identity, or another red herring? As he stepped into the night, the church bells tolled 3, their mournful peal swallowed by the fog. The shadows of St. Agnes held their secrets close, but Poirot knew the truth was near. The next move would be perilous, and he must tread with care. Chapter 5. Veils of Deception. The blackmail letter, unearthed from the Harrington family plot, lay heavy in Hercule Poirot's gloved hands as he stood in the vestry of St. Agnes Church. Its words, "Pay or perish, £500 by Sunday, or the village knows your bastard," etched into his memory like a discordant note in a sacred hymn. The fog outside had thickened, wrapping the church in a shroud that seemed to mirror the layers of deceit cloaking the murder of Reginald Harrington. The little Belgian detective, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the damp, paced the stone floor, his gray cells whirring with the implications of this new clue. A secret child, a scandal buried in the past, and a demand for silence. Each piece was a thread in a tapestry of betrayal, but the pattern remained elusive. Poirot knew the truth lay not in the obvious but in the subtle, and he resolved to peel back the veils of deception one by one. The candelabrum's flickering light cast long shadows across the vestry, where Inspector Japp awaited, his pipe sending curls of smoke into the air. "That letter's a proper bombshell, Poirot," Japp said, his voice gruff. Harrington was being squeezed, no doubt about it. But who wrote it? And who's this child? Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Mon ami, the child is the key. A secret heir threatens inheritance, reputation, perhaps even love. We must confront Madame Harrington. She, above all, would know of such a scandal. Lydia Harrington was summoned first, her black-veiled figure gliding into the vestry like a specter of mourning. She sat, her hands folded with an almost unnatural calm, her face obscured but her posture rigid. Poirot held up the letter, its paper creased but damning. "Madame," he began, his voice soft yet piercing. "This letter speaks of a bastard, a child from your husband's past. You claimed your marriage was distant, yet you forgave his indiscretions. Tell me, what do you know of this heir?" Lydia's fingers tightened, the only sign of disquiet. For a long moment, "My own." But Poirot noted the tremor in her voice, the careful choice of words. A mother's devotion or a calculated facade? He dismissed her, his mind cataloging the revelation. Timothy, the secret son, a motive for murder if inheritance was at stake. Emily Thorne was next, her red hair loose and wild, her face pale as she entered. She had overheard Lydia's confession from the nave where she'd lingered after the previous interrogation. "Timothy, a son?" she gasped, her hands clutching her scarf. That explains why Harrington favored him, always praising his potential for the choir when he visited. I thought it was just nepotism. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Mademoiselle, you spoke of your own shame, your illegitimacy. Did Monsieur Harrington's knowledge of your past make you fear exposure, especially with a rival heir in play?" Emily's eyes flashed with defiance. "He threatened to ruin my audition, yes, but I didn't know about Timothy, and I'd never kill for a role. Arthur and I, we planned to leave, to start anew. Murder doesn't fit that plan." Poirot nodded, noting her sincerity but also her quick glance toward the door, as if expecting rescue or escape. "And this brooch, marked E.T., you claim it was stolen, yet it was found in the loft. A coincidence or a frame?" "I don't know," Emily cried, her voice breaking. "Someone's trying to pin this on me. I swear it." Arthur Blackwood followed, his lean frame tense, his dark eyes smoldering with barely concealed anger. Poirot shifted his approach, probing the tenor's financial ties to the victim. "Monsieur Blackwood, you spoke of a stolen aria, but was there more? Did you perhaps lend money to Monsieur Harrington to cover his gambling debts?" Arthur's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. "All right, I'll admit it. I loaned him £200 last year thinking he'd repay me from his compositions. He didn't. Kept stringing me along, saying the church funds would cover it. I was in the loft before the service, by a witness who claims you argued with the victim. What transpired?" O'Shea's eyes widened, his fingers fumbling with the beads. I went to reason with him. He was furious about the missing collection plate, said I'd stolen it. I told him it was misplaced, that I'd find it. He wouldn't listen, threatened to go to the bishop. But I swear, I left him breathing." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And the poison, mon père? The vial in the basement, the residue on the organ keys. Did you handle such things?" O'Shea shook his head vehemently. "Never. I've no knowledge of poisons. I'm a man of God, not a murderer." The detective dismissed him, his mind racing. A new clue had surfaced during the interrogations. A torn glove found in the confessional, its fabric matching the fine kidskin Lydia Harrington wore. He confronted her privately, holding up the glove. Madame, this was found where secrets are whispered. Yours, perhaps.
Lydia's composure faltered, her hands trembling slightly. I lost a glove last week. It's not uncommon. Surely you don't think. Poirot cut her off with a raised hand. I think nothing, madame, until the gray cells are satisfied. But the glove, it is a detail most curious. As the suspects dispersed, the church grew quiet, the only sound the distant drip of wax from the candelabrum. Poirot lingered in the nave, his thoughts a whirlwind of motives and clues. The blackmail letter, the secret heir, the stolen brooch, the torn glove. Each piece was a note in a complex score, but the melody of truth remained elusive. He returned to the vestry, where Japp awaited with another find. A forged note, penned in Harrington's hand, implicating Father O'Shea in the theft of the collection plate. Clumsy work, Japp said. The ink's too fresh, the handwriting off. Someone's trying to point the finger. Poirot nodded. A red herring, mon ami, meant to distract.
Into the churchyard. The fog now a living thing, curling around the gravestones like ghostly fingers. The rose petal from the Harrington plot nagged at him, a detail too delicate for this grim drama. Was it a mourner's tribute, or a killer's careless mistake? He scanned the shadows, half expecting another stone to topple. But the night was still, save for the distant toll of the church bells marking 4 o'clock. Returning to the vestry, he shared his thoughts with Japp. The veils of deception are many, mon ami. The heir, the affair, the blackmail. They weave a complex web. But the attack on Mademoiselle Thorne, it is a crack in the killer's armor. They grow desperate, and desperation betrays. Japp shook his head. You're seeing patterns where I see chaos, Poirot. But I'll admit, this case is a tangle. What's next? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Next, we tighten the net. The glove, the letter, the assault. They point to a mind both cunning and cornered. The gray cells, they work tirelessly, and soon, the truth will sing. As he retired to the Golden Lyre, the fog seemed to pulse with secrets, the church's spires looming like silent sentinels. The killer was close, too close, and Poirot knew the next clue would bring danger as well as revelation. Chapter 6. Confessions in the Confessional. The piercing cry from Emily Thorne claiming an assault by a masked figure in the rectory lingered in the air of St. Agnes Church like a discordant note, amplifying the tension that already gripped the village of Ashford-on-Thames. Hercule Poirot, his immaculate suit a stark contrast to the shadowed vestry, stood motionless, his green eyes narrowed as he processed this latest development. The fog outside had thickened into a near-opaque veil, mirroring the layers of deception that cloaked the murder of Reginald Harrington. The torn glove, the blackmail letter, the stolen brooch. Each clue was a thread in a tapestry of disheveled, her eyes wide with fear. Mademoiselle, describe this figure. Every detail, s'il vous plaît. Emily's voice quavered as she spoke. It was dark in the rectory hall. The figure wore a black cloak, a scarf over their face. They pushed me against the wall, hissed at me to stop talking to the detective. I tried to fight back, but they were strong. Then they fled when I screamed. I didn't see their eyes, but the voice was low. Could have been anyone. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the ambiguity. A cloaked figure, a muffled voice, too vague to pinpoint, yet deliberate enough to suggest intent. He filed the detail away, turning his attention to the torn glove found in the confessional, its fine kidskin a match for Lydia Harrington's attire. He summoned her privately, holding the glove aloft like a prosecutor's exhibit. "Madame," he said, his voice soft but incisive. "This glove was found where secrets are whispered. It is yours, no? And yet you claimed it lost. Explain." Lydia's veiled figure stiffened, her hands folding tightly in her lap. "I told you, Mr. Poirot, I lost a glove last week. It's not uncommon in a busy parish. Surely you don't believe I'd skulk about attacking sopranos or poisoning my husband?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "I believe nothing until the gray cells are satisfied, madame. But the glove, it is a detail most curious. And your alibi for the time of the assault, where were you?" Lydia hesitated, her veil shifting slightly. "I was at the Golden Lyre, speaking with the innkeeper about funeral arrangements. He'll confirm it." But Poirot noted the pause, the faint tremor in her voice. A false alibi, or merely nerves? He dismissed her, his thoughts turning to the broader web of motives. The blackmail letter, demanding £500 to keep silent about Harrington's secret son, Timothy, pointed to inheritance as a motive. Lydia's claim of raising the boy as her own suggested devotion, but also a potential threat to her financial security. He needed more. "Emily said he'd ruin us both if I didn't keep quiet about his thieving ways. But I didn't attack her, and I didn't kill him. Check my hands, no bruises from a scuffle." Poirot noted the sincerity, but also the evasion. Arthur's alibi was crumbling, his passion a double-edged sword. He dismissed the tenor, turning to Father O'Shea, whose ruddy cheeks were flushed with nervous perspiration as he clutched his rosary. "Mon père," Poirot said, "you were seen in the loft before evensong, arguing with Monsieur Harrington. Yet you claim innocence. Tell me, did you handle the poison stores in the basement?" O'Shea's eyes widened, his fingers fumbling with the beads. "Never. I've no knowledge of poisons. I argued with Reginald about the collection plate, yes, but I left him alive. As for the basement, I rarely go there, too dusty for my lungs." Poirot pressed further. "And the funds you diverted for his debts, did they include a receipt, perhaps, to prove your story?" O'Shea hesitated, then produced a crumpled slip from his pocket. "Here, a receipt for the orphanage donation. The rest for Reginald's debts was verbal. He insisted on secrecy." The receipt was legitimate, exonerating O'Shea partially, but Poirot noted the priest's unease. Blackmail again seemed to bind Harrington to his victims. The detective's mind raced. The poison on the organ keys, the tea, the vial with smudged prints. Could a gloved hand have applied the fatal dose, protecting the killer from detection? A new clue emerged as Japp presented a book from Harrington's study. Ghosts of Ashford, a local history filled with tales of spectral choristers haunting St. Agnes. "Found this on his desk," Japp said. "Looks like he was reading up on the church's legends. Think it's relevant?" Poirot scoffed. "A red herring, mon ami. The supernatural is but human trickery and disguise. Yet the book's presence suggests the killer wished to fuel such tales, perhaps to distract from their actions." He returned to the confessional, drawn by the glove's discovery. The residue on the keys, oily and deadly, suggested a contact poison, applied with precision. Gloves could protect the killer, explaining the smudged prints on the vial. But whose gloves? Lydia's or another's? As he descended, a sudden crash shattered the silence. A chandelier, its heavy iron frame plummeting from the nave's ceiling, missing Poirot by inches. He leapt back, his heart pounding as dust and shards scattered across the floor. Japp rushed in, his face pale. "Blimey, Poirot, that was meant for you." Poirot dusted his suit, his composure unshaken but his eyes blazing. "Oui, mon ami. The killer grows desperate. They fear the gray cells are too close." He examined the chandelier's chain, noting clean cuts. Sabotage, not accident. The attack was a bold move, but also a mistake, revealing the killer's panic. Returning to the vestry, Poirot gathered his thoughts. The assault on Emily, the whisper in the confessional, the chandelier. Each was a desperate act, a crack in the killer's facade. The glove, the blackmail letter, the phonograph, the book of ghosts, red herrings and truths intertwined. He recalled the rose petal from the graveyard, its delicate presence a jarring note in this grim drama. Was it a mourner's tribute or a killer's slip? Japp paced, his pipe relit. "This is getting out of hand, Poirot. First Emily, now you. We need to lock this place down." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Non, mon ami. Let the killer run. They will trip." The confessional whisper. "It points to Madame Harrington, but it is too convenient." The glove, the assault, the chandelier. They are threads, and the needle is near. As he stepped into the churchyard, the fog swirled, the church bells tolling 5, their mournful peals swallowed by the mist. The killer was close, their desperation a beacon. Poirot clutched the torn glove, his gray cells alight with possibilities. The net examined the chandelier's severed chain under the flickering light of a lantern. "Blimey, Poirot, that was no accident," he growled, his pipe forgotten in his hand. "Clean cuts, made with a blade. Someone's got it in for you. Any guesses who?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his quickening interest. "Mon ami, the killer fears the gray cells are too close. This act, it is bold but clumsy. It reveals panic, and panic betrays. We must press our advantage." He brushed the plaster from his suit, his mind already cataloging the suspects. Emily Thorne, with her ambition and secret affair. Father Michael O'Shea, entangled in blackmail and church funds. Arthur Blackwood, driven by rage and debt. Lydia Harrington, whose cool demeanor hid a potential motive for inheritance. And now, the shadowy possibility of Timothy, the secret heir. He summoned Emily first, her red hair disheveled from the earlier assault, her eyes still wide with fear. "Mademoiselle Thorne," Poirot began, his voice soft but incisive. "The brooch marked E.T. You claim it was stolen, yet it was found in the loft. And now an attack on your person. Tell me, who knew of your affair with Monsieur Blackwood, and who might wish to silence you?" Emily's hands trembled as she clutched her scarf. "Only Arthur and I knew, and, well, Harrington, of course. He threatened to expose us. But the brooch, I swear it was stolen days before the murder. Someone's trying to frame me, Mr. Poirot. And that attack. I don't know who it was, but they wanted me scared." Poirot's eyes narrowed, noting her sincerity, but also her quick glance toward the door. "And the chandelier, mademoiselle? Did you see anyone near the nave ceiling before it fell?" Emily shook her head. "No, I was in the rectory recovering, but Arthur was in the nave earlier, practicing. He wouldn't, though.
He loves me. Poirot dismissed her, his thoughts turning to Arthur Blackwood. The tenor entered, his lean frame tense, his dark eyes smoldering with defiance. "Monsieur Blackwood," Poirot said.
Evasion. He turned to Father O'Shea, whose ruddy cheeks were flushed with nervous perspiration as he clutched his rosary. "Mon père," Poirot said, "you admitted to covering Harrington's debts with church funds. Did you also know of his plans to alter his will, perhaps to favor his secret son, Timothy?" O'Shea's eyes widened, his fingers fumbling with the beads. "I knew nothing of a will change. Reginald mentioned a nephew, Timothy, but not that he was his son. As for the debts, I told you, it was at his insistence. I had no reason to kill him." Poirot pressed further. "And the chandelier, mon père? You have access to the nave's upper galleries, where the chains are anchored. Were you there before the crash?" O'Shea shook his head vehemently. "I was in the rectory praying. I swear it on the cross." Lydia Harrington was summoned last, her black-veiled figure gliding into the vestry like a shadow. Poirot held up the torn glove, its kidskin a damning match to her attire. "Madame, your alibi for the assault on Mademoiselle Thorne. It is with the innkeeper, yes. Yet the glove suggests you were in the confessional, perhaps whispering secrets. And now a chandelier falls. Tell me, what do you hide?" Lydia's hands tightened, her veil concealing any flicker of emotion. "I told you, Mr. Poirot, the glove was lost. As for the innkeeper, he'll confirm I was discussing funeral plans. I know nothing of chandeliers or assaults. You accuse me unjustly." But Poirot noted the faint tremor in her voice, the way her fingers gripped her shawl. He pressed further. "And the will, madame? Your husband planned to disinherit you in favor of Timothy, his son. Did this threaten your future?" Lydia's head tilted, her voice cold. "Reginald's will was his affair. I raised Timothy as my own. I had no need to kill for money or spite." Poirot dismissed her, his mind racing. The glove, the chandelier, the whisper in the confessional, each pointed to Lydia. Yet the evidence was too convenient, too neatly Chandelier's fall betrayed panic. He recalled the rose petal from the graveyard, its delicate presence a jarring note. Was it a mourner's tribute or a killer's slip? A telegram arrived, its contents a jolt. Timothy, Harrington's secret son, was in Ashford, incognito as a chorister. Poirot's gray cells ignited. A new suspect, with a motive rooted in abandonment and inheritance. He summoned Timothy, a lanky youth of 19 with his father's sharp features, his eyes wary as he entered the vestry. "Monsieur Timothy," Poirot said, "you are the son of Reginald Harrington, raised as his nephew. Did you know of your true parentage?" Timothy's face paled, his hands trembling. I suspected. Father, Reginald, summoned me last week, said he'd tell me everything, but he was dead before I could ask." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And your presence in Ashford, disguised as a chorister. It is no coincidence, no? Did you seek revenge for his silence?" Timothy shook his head. "I wanted answers, not blood. I was in the nave during evensong, singing with the choir. Ask anyone." But Poirot noted the youth's unease, the way his eyes avoided the organ loft. A new thread, but was it the key? He dismissed Timothy, his thoughts a whirlwind. The suspect's motives, Emily's ambition, Arthur's rage, O'Shea's shame, Lydia's inheritance, Timothy's abandonment, wove a complex web. But the chandelier's fall suggested a killer on the edge. As night deepened, a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling like a warning. Poirot ventured to the choir loft, drawn by an instinct he could not name. Lightning illuminated the organ, its pipes glinting like sentinels. He scanned the shadows, expecting another trap, when a figure appeared at the loft's edge. A cloaked silhouette, motionless, watching. Poirot's heart quickened, but he stood firm. The blackmail letter, the torn glove, the stolen brooch, and the ghostly phonograph all pointed to a killer desperate to conceal their tracks. Poirot's gray cells, relentless as the storm outside, churned through the clues, sensing that the truth was near, hidden in the shadows of this sacred sanctuary. Inspector Japp, his face etched with fatigue, joined Poirot in the vestry, his pipe unlit as he clutched a telegram confirming Timothy's presence in Ashford. "This lad's a wild card, Poirot," Japp said, his voice gruff. "Turns up out of nowhere, claiming his father summoned him. Think he's our man?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his quickening interest. "Mon ami, Timothy is a thread in the tapestry, but whether he is the needle or merely a knot, we shall see. His arrival is no coincidence, but the killer's desperation. The chandelier, the assault on Mademoiselle Thorne, suggests a mind already unraveling. We must test them all." He summoned Timothy first, the lanky youth entering the vestry with wary eyes, his sharp features a haunting echo of his late father. His chorister's robe was slightly askew, as if donned in haste, and his hands trembled as he faced Poirot's scrutiny. "Monsieur Timothy," the detective began, his voice soft but incisive. "You claim your father summoned you to Ashford, yet you arrived incognito, disguised as a chorister. Why the secrecy, and what did Monsieur Harrington fear?" Timothy's face paled, his voice barely above a whisper. "He sent a letter. Said danger loomed. Someone was after him. He wouldn't say who, only that I needed to know the truth about my birth. I came to hear it, but he was dead before I could ask. I wore the robe to blend in, to watch without being noticed." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And this danger, did he speak of blackmail? A letter demanding £500 to keep your existence secret? True?" Arthur's jaw tightened, his fists clenching. "Harrington owed me £200, and he stole my aria. Yes. I confronted him, demanded repayment or credit. He laughed, said I'd never prove it. But blackmail? That's his game, not mine. He threatened to expose my affair with Emily if I pushed him." Poirot's eyebrows arched. "And this affair, it gave him power over you, enough to drive you to silence him?" Arthur's voice was low, dangerous. "I wanted my money and my music, not his life. I was in the nave during the murder, practicing. And I'd never hurt Emily, or you, with that chandelier nonsense." Poirot noted the passion, the evasion. Arthur's fingerprints on the cyanide vial, though smudged, were damning. Yet the sabotage of the chandelier suggested a broader conspiracy. He turned to Emily Thorne, who entered with her red hair loose, her face pale from the earlier assault. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you and Monsieur Blackwood planned to elope, yet Harrington's threats to expose you stood in your way. Did you act to protect your future?" Emily's eyes flashed with defiance. "We wanted freedom, not murder. Harrington was cruel, yes, but I'd never poison him. And that attack on me, someone wants me silent, not dead." Poirot pressed further. "And the brooch, mademoiselle? You claim it was stolen, yet it points to you. And now you accuse Madame Harrington of knowing too much. Why?" Emily hesitated, her voice trembling. "I overheard Lydia in the rectory, talking to Father O'Shea. She said Reginald deserved peace. Sounded like she meant his death. I think she poisoned the tea." The accusation hung in the air, a thunderclap in the storm. Lydia, summoned once more, glided into the vestry, her black veil an impenetrable mask. Before Poirot could speak, she fainted, her body crumpling to the floor with a dramatic thud. Jap rushed to her side, fanning her with his hat as she revived, her breath shallow, but her composure quickly restored. "Madame," voice carrying over the storm's rumble. "The tea was prepared in the vestry, the keys touched only by Monsieur Harrington. Who had opportunity?" Tensions peaked as accusations flew. Emily pointed at Lydia, her voice shrill. "She was in the vestry before service. I saw her near the kettle." Arthur defended her, shouting, "You're wrong! I was there, and she wasn't." O'Shea, sweating, muttered prayers, while Timothy watched in silence, his eyes darting to the organ. Poirot's mind whirred, piecing together the clues. The blackmail letter pointed to Timothy's existence, but the glove and brooch suggested a frame. The chandelier sabotage, the assault on Emily, the whisper, all spoke of a killer covering their tracks. A new clue emerged as he inspected the organ. A hidden compartment beneath the bench, containing a vial with traces of the same oily residue found on the keys. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "The poison was applied here, with precision. But whose hand?" The storm's thunder crashed, shaking the loft as Poirot declared, "The killer is among us, mes amis. The tea, the keys, the blackmail. They are parts of a symphony. But a missing note remains." He paused, his eyes sweeping the group, noting their fear, their guilt, their secrets. Lightning illuminated the loft, casting shadows that seemed to dance with accusation. Poirot's heart quickened, sensing the killer's desperation. "The truth," he said. "It is close. But a link is missing. The gray cells. They work, and soon they will sing." As the suspects dispersed, the storm raged on, rain lashing the stained glass windows. Poirot lingered in the loft, his lantern casting a feeble glow. The residue, the vial, the glove, the brooch, each was a thread, but the needle eluded him. He recalled the rose petal from the graveyard, its delicate presence a jarring note. Was it a mourner's tribute, or a killer's slip? Jap joined him, his face grim. "This lot's a nest of vipers, Poirot," blazing with the clarity of revelation. The murder of Reginald Harrington in the choir loft had woven a tapestry of deception. Blackmail letters, a torn glove, a stolen brooch, a ghostly phonograph, a sabotaged chandelier, and an assault on Emily Thorne, all threads in a complex web. The sudden appearance of Timothy, Harrington's secret son, had tightened the noose, but the killer's identity remained elusive. Poirot's gray cells, awakened by the storm's electric charge, churned through the clues, sensing that the final act was near. The sanctuary, once a haven, was now a stage for truth, and the little Belgian detective was ready to conduct its finale. Inspector Japp, his face etched with exhaustion, stood beside Poirot, his pipe unlit as he clutched a notebook filled with evidence reports. "This case is a proper tangle, Poirot," he said, his voice hoarse. "The vial in the organ, Timothy's arrival, Lydia's faint. Where's it all pointing? You've got that look, like you're onto something." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his confidence. "Mon ami, the gray cells, they awaken. The killer has played a clever game. Red herrings, planted clues, desperate acts. But they cannot outrun the truth. We shall assemble the suspects once more, here in the nave, and the symphony of deception will resolve into harmony." He summoned the suspects: Emily Thorne, Arthur Blackwood, Father Michael O'Shea, Lydia Harrington, and Timothy, to the nave, their faces pale under the flickering light of the candelabrum. The organ loomed above, its pipes glinting like silent sentinels, a reminder of the murder that had profaned this sacred space. Poirot positioned himself at the center, his small frame radiating authority, his voice clear and commanding despite the storm's roar. "Mes amis," he began, "the murder of Monsieur Reginald Harrington is a puzzle of many pieces, but the gray cells of Hercule Poirot have begun to assemble them. Let us unravel the truth together." Preparing the service, Lydia Harrington, her black veil a mask of composure, spoke coolly. "My husband played the organ, not I. I was below in the nave during evensong." Timothy, the secret son, stood silent, his sharp features drawn, his eyes darting to the loft. Poirot noted their reactions, his mind cataloging every glance, every tremor. He continued, his voice steady but incisive. "The red herrings, they are many. The brooch marked E.T. claimed stolen by Mademoiselle Thorne, found in the loft. The torn glove matching Madame Harrington's left in the confessional. The forged note implicating mon père. The ghostly phonograph playing Harrington's requiem. The book of Ashford's ghosts, all designed to mislead, to point fingers elsewhere. But the gray cells, they see through the fog." He paced, his patent leather shoes clicking on the stone floor, each step a beat in the rhythm of revelation. "Let us consider the motives. Mademoiselle Thorne, your ambition for the choirmaster's role was thwarted by Harrington's cruelty, and he threatened to expose your illegitimacy and affair with Monsieur Blackwood. A motive, no?" Emily's eyes flashed. "I wanted to prove him wrong, not kill him. Arthur and I planned to elope, not murder." Poirot turned to Arthur. "Monsieur Blackwood, your rage over a stolen aria and unpaid debts burned hot. Harrington blackmailed you with your affair, yes? A reason to silence him." Arthur's fists clenched. "I wanted my music back, not his life. I didn't touch that poison." Poirot's gaze shifted to Father O'Shea. "Mon père, you covered Harrington's gambling debts with church funds, under threat of exposure for your past indiscretions. A scandal could ruin you." O'Shea's rosary rattled. "I sinned, yes, but not murder. I paid his debts to protect the church." Finally, Poirot faced Lydia. "Madame, your husband planned to disinherit you in favor of Timothy, his secret son. The codicil in his will threatened your future. And method. The poison on the keys required access, knowledge, and opportunity. He climbed the spiral staircase to the choir loft, the suspects trailing reluctantly behind. The organ loomed, its residue-stained keys a silent witness. Poirot's fingers hovered over them, careful not to touch. "The killer," he said, knew Harrington would play without gloves, his hands bare on the keys. The tea was a backup, a distraction. But who could approach the organ unnoticed? He turned to the group, his voice rising over the storm. The blackmail letter demanded £500 to keep Timothy's existence secret. But who wrote it? And who stood to gain most from Harrington's death? A sudden realization struck. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he faced Father O'Shea. "Mon père, your alibi for the tea preparation. It is weak. And your sermons, they speak of the serpent in Eden. The very phrase in the hymn book's note. Did you seek to protect a secret beyond the funds?" O'Shea's face reddened, his rosary slipping from his fingers. I preached on betrayal, yes, but I didn't write that note. I was in the rectory, praying. Poirot's gaze shifted to Lydia. "And you, madam, admitted jealousy of your husband's obsessions. Did you discover another secret? An affair perhaps with mon père?" Lydia gasped, her veil trembling. "How dare you?" Reginald's mistress was music, not another woman. And Father O'Shea, he's a man of God. But Poirot's gray cells were alight. He turned to Timothy. "Monsieur, you confessed anger at your father's abandonment. Did you learn of his plans to favor you in his will, threatening Madame Harrington's inheritance?" Timothy's eyes widened. "I didn't know about the will. I just wanted the truth." The accusations swirled, the storm's fury mirroring the tension. Poirot raised his voice, his words cutting through the chaos. "The killer is among us, mes amis. The poison, the panic." His green eyes blazing with the clarity of revelation. "The murder of Reginald Harrington, poisoned in this very loft during evensong, had woven a tapestry of deception. Blackmail letters, a torn glove, a stolen brooch, a ghostly phonograph, a sabotaged chandelier, and an assault on Emily Thorne. The sudden appearance of Timothy, Harrington's secret son, had tightened the web, but the shot, fired from the shadows, marked the killer's final, desperate act. Poirot's gray cells, now fully awakened, were ready to unveil the truth in this sacred sanctuary turned stage for murder. Inspector Japp, his revolver drawn, scanned the nave, his face taut with alarm. "Stay where you are," he barked, his voice cutting through the suspect's cries. Emily Thorne clutched Arthur Blackwood's arm, her red hair wild in the flickering lantern light. Father Michael O'Shea fumbled with his rosary, muttering prayers. Lydia Harrington, her black veil trembling, stood rigid, while Timothy, the secret son, froze, his sharp features pale with shock. Poirot raised a gloved hand, his voice steady and commanding. "Calm yourselves, mes amis." The shot. It was a blank, fired to flush the guilty, and it has succeeded. Japp lowered his revolver, his brow furrowing. "A blank? You planned this, Poirot?" The detective's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his satisfaction. "Oui, mon ami, a theatrical touch, courtesy of your men, to unsettle the killer. Their reaction, it reveals much." He stepped forward, his patent leather shoes clicking on the loft's wooden floor. the organ looming behind him like a silent witness. The murder of Monsieur Reginald Harrington is a puzzle of many pieces, but the gray cells of Hercule Poirot have assembled them. Let us reveal the truth. He turned to the suspects, their faces a gallery of fear and guilt under the storm's flickering light. The poison, he began, was not only in the tea, as we first believed. It was on the organ keys, a affair with Monsieur Blackwood. A motive, yes, but your fear is genuine, and the brooch was stolen, not placed by you. Emily's eyes widened, her voice trembling. I swear, I didn't kill him. Arthur and I. We wanted to leave, not murder. Poirot turned to Father O'Shea. Mon père, you covered Harrington's gambling debts with church funds, under threat of exposure for past sins. Your sermon on the serpent in Eden matches the hymn book's note. Yet your receipt for the orphanage clears you, partially. O'Shea's rosary rattled. I sinned, but not murder. I protected the church. Poirot faced Lydia. Madame, your husband planned to disinherit you for Timothy, his son. The glove, the whisper in the confessional. The wife knows all. They point to you. Yet your composure, it is too perfect, non. Lydia's hands tightened, her voice cold. I raised Timothy as my own. I had no need to kill for money or spite. Poirot's eyes shifted to Timothy. Monsieur, your abandonment by your father stirred anger. You arrived incognito, seeking truth. Did you seek revenge? Timothy's face paled. I wanted answers, not blood. I was singing in the choir when he died. The storm's thunder punctuated the accusations. Lightning casting shadows that danced with guilt. Poirot paced, his voice rising over the wind. The blackmail letter demanded £500 to keep Timothy's existence secret. The chandelier's fall, the assault on Mademoiselle Thorne. They show a killer desperate to silence. But the truth, it emerges. He paused, his eyes locking on Arthur Blackwood. Monsieur Blackwood, your rage over a stolen aria and unpaid debts burned hot. But there is more. Harrington wooed Mademoiselle Thorne in secret, did he not? A rival for her love, a threat to your future. Arthur's jaw dropped, his fists clenching. Constables seized him, cuffs snapping around his wrists. Damn you, Poirot, he roared, struggling as they dragged him away. He deserved it. He took everything. My music, my love, Emily sobbed, collapsing onto a pew, while O'Shea crossed himself, muttering prayers. Lydia's veil trembled, but she remained silent. Timothy's eyes filled with tears, his father's death now a solved tragedy. Poirot bowed slightly, his voice soft. The gray cells, they triumph. Order and method prevail. Jap clapped Poirot on the shoulder. You've done it again, old chap, but that shot gave me a heart attack. Poirot's eyes twinkled. A necessary flourish, mon ami, to break the killer's nerve. As the storm subsided, the church grew quiet, the organ's pipes no longer ominous, but serene. Poirot descended the loft, his thoughts turning to the resolution. Lydia inherited Harrington's modest estate, vowing to fund the church's restoration in his memory. Emily, shaken but free, found solace in her music, her affair with Arthur a bitter memory.
Timothy, grieving his father's loss, resolved to honor his legacy through study. Father O'Shea, cleared of murder but chastened by his sins, rededicated himself to his flock. The fog lifted as Poirot stepped into the churchyard, the dawn breaking over Ashford-on-Thames. The bells tolled 8, their peal no longer mournful but hopeful. The sanctuary was cleansed, its secrets laid bare. Poirot adjusted his Homburg hat, his heart light with the satisfaction of a puzzle solved. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the truth, it sings like a hymn." He walked toward the Golden Lyre, his steps brisk, the storm's last clouds parting above. Another case closed, another victory for the Grey Cells. The village would heal, and Poirot, ever the wanderer, would soon board his train to London, ready for the next mystery to call.